So if you're in a situation where where so, where something you're one step ahead of what's going on.
We're actually live. How about this? See
How about that?
How about that? That's spontaneity for you right there.
There you go.
Hello there. Welcome to Mastering Music, Mastering Life. I'm Tony Jack the Bear Mance, and we're here at Deluxe Mastering Studios in Melbourne, Australia. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this is the podcast where we talk to music industry professionals about their journey through it and any challenges they may have overcome. And we just talk about the music stuff and the life stuff and anything that's relevant or maybe irrelevant for that matter, because we never know where the fuck it's going to go. But I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today a guest that I never thought in a million fucking years I'd get him on, but here he is. Mr. Charles Fisher, producer extraordinaire and audio educator. Mate.
How are you, mate?
Good to see you.
Good evening, folks.
Good to see you, mate. Lovely.
It's really good to meet you too.
I was chuffed to know you're coming on. I don't know if you know how this came to be, but I put something up on my podcast on my Facebook a few weeks back, and I said, "Oh, can someone give me some ideas to some interesting people to get on?" And a guy called Stephen Boddy, who's a student of yours or colleague?
No, he's a colleague of mine.
Colleague of yours. He said, "Oh, get Charles Fisher on." So in my mind, I'm thinking, what the fuck would Charles Fisher want to do here? You know, Charles is fucking right up there in the world, in the upper echelon. And so, I wasn't quite that self-deprecating, but I honestly thought, well, what would he really want to be on here for? But sure enough,
you have a great reputation, you know.
Oh, well, thanks, mate. I appreciate that. You know, and then I get a phone call from you, and I was really, honestly, I was just so thrilled, and because you're just a perfect guest to have on here because of the fact that you're so experienced and you've got such a great resume and a great body of work, and in the context of this podcast, which is where I'm hoping to get people on to talk about their journey and the challenges they've gone through. You know, kids can tune in, and I think that as you get on, you have a lot of stuff to offer for those who want to listen to it. So, you know, and we've only got an hour or so here, and I know we won't be able to fit it all in, but mate, it's just good to have you on. Thank you very much again.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, mate, what are you doing back in Australia? You said you've been here for a few years. You're in LA for a while.
I was in LA. I was living there for about close to 10 years. Close to 10 years I was there.
Yeah. How's life in LA?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I don't know what's going on there now, but when I was there, I really enjoyed it.
How did you get there? What was this? Was it the Savage Garden thing that got you there?
Well, it was the Savage Garden thing got me my immigration status. It got me my green card, but I'd been coming and going from the United States for quite a few years prior to that. I had a working visa, so I was spending quite a bit of time there, and I always used to go there for mixing. I just really liked the technology that was available there, and I really liked the musicianship and the studios and the California sunshine, and I love New York. I did quite a few things in New York.
Yeah.
I did a few things in Nashville. I made a lot of friends, and I felt very at home there. And then I after Savage Garden, I had this work visa, and I had an agent, and he said, well, you know, it costs quite a bit of money to maintain a work visa. He said, why don't you just apply for a green card? So I did, and I got it, and you know, my first marriage fell apart around the same time, so it seemed like a good time to leave Dodge.
Yeah, and here you are now.
Yeah.
So you subsequently remarried since then?
Yes, I've remarried to a wonderful girl, Bernadette.
Yeah.
And I have two little boys, Michael and Daniel. They're 7 and 9.
Yeah.
And my daughter from my first marriage, Sarah, she's 34 now,
right,
and she lives in New York.
Yeah.
Full circle.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
One of the things I found with my time that I spent in America, and this is predominantly 80s, where I spent more time there, was, and I guess it's probably the same today, was the big difference in the American mindset in terms of the level of professionalism and the level of service and how far they go to get the shit done.
Well, there's way more competition there, and the money's much bigger, and there's more at stake. So for all those reasons, you have to be a lot more on the ball, and we are dealing with an art form that they pretty much invented. So, there's a whole different sensibility to things over there than there is here.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you doing these days now that you're back, or
I'm
have been
not.
back for a while?
Yeah, I'm not doing much. I 2-3 years back, I found I had to travel a lot to make a good living. I had to travel a lot, and then about 3 years ago, I guess it's 3 years ago, I did an album in Bangkok. I did an album in Dublin, and that took me to like Los Angeles, and I just got really kind of tired of traveling a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah,
uh, and I kind of thought, it's time to chill a little bit. I mean, I'd spent 45 years in the studio,
hmm
and so I thought I'd chill a little bit. And a friend of mine suggested that I try teaching. So I got this job at AIM, and I fell in love with teaching.
yeah. What do you like about it?
I I uh, I like the kids. I like the way I like the dreams that they have.
Mm.
Um, I like their hunger for answers.
Yeah,
Um, I just love the interaction. I love the fact that they're really young,
yeah, yeah. And they're enthusiastic, and
Yeah,
there's an energy I find being around kids, and that takes me back to what it was like when I was that age, and having that hunger and passion, and it reignites me. And I guess, I mean, when you were starting out, who were the people that mentored you or that were instrumental in helping you carve your path?
well, I didn't have a lot in the way of mentoring. Uh, we didn't have much in the way of an industry when I started,
hmm Was it Trafalgar
So,
Studios? Was that your?
well, Trafalgar Studios I built. I saw one of your podcasts the other day when you were talking about how you get into this business and how you get your foot in the door.
Yeah,
And you had this phrase where you said, and sometimes you actually have to build the door.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, it was the same for me back then, and I built the door.
yeah,
I
yeah,
built. Me and a friend of mine built Trafalgar
yeah,
Studios, and that was a way of getting into recording, which is what I always wanted to do.
yeah.
Um,
So were you self-taught effectively as an engineer?
I was self-taught. We had an engineer in the studio by the name of John Sayers.
Yeah,
I learned a lot
yeah,
observing him.
yeah.
Um, Prior to that, my first time in a studio was in 1967 as a guitar player,
Yeah.
and my band did a take, and we looked up at the producer for feedback, and the producer looked, he had a stopwatch in his hand. He went, that was 3.5 minutes long. Do you think you can play it faster because it needs to be shorter?
For
And
radio,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
and that was my that was my introduction into how a producer works. So it wasn't a lot of value there.
yeah, yeah,
But I learned a lot watching John Sayers, and I learned a lot watching some of the other producers that came through the studio at that time. But other than that, we pretty much made it all up. Trafalgar was the first studio in Australia that had speakers built into the wall, what we
yeah.
call
Because that
flush
flush
mounted
mount, yeah, yeah,
speakers.
a soffit mount. I think,
Yeah,
And John's design. I mean, John, I think, still actively is
yeah,
involved
he's still actively
designing
involved in
rooms,
designing
and
rooms.
yep, yep, yep.
And so we were pretty much making it up as we went along.
hmm
There wasn't a lot of mentoring going on,
Yeah,
and I guess the 80s it was different. Late 70s, 80s, we started hiring assistants, and
yeah,
and that's when we started to train up
hmm
younger people.
yeah,
But otherwise, my first 3 years in the studio was spent in the office doing the books
hmm
and the bookings.
yeah.
I never. It took me about 3 years to get a break in the studio itself.
Yeah, I think it's different nowadays with I think interning the way it was. Well, I wasn't a typical product of the system itself either, but now especially interning, I think doesn't really exist as much as it.
No, well, the big studios have closed, so we used to have staff engineers and staff assistants and
Yeah,
staff maintenance guys,
mm,
and these
mm,
these guys had a job, and
yeah,
they learnt,
mm,
and the studio system's completely gone, and there's not a lot of that going on now.
Yeah.
So it's harder.
Yeah, I think it's, well, I guess as they say, no matter how flat you make a pancake, there's always two sides. And when I compare what it was like when I first started, and obviously back in your day where it was all winging it, nowadays we've got a generation where kids have got access to technology. It's accessible, it's affordable, it's available, it's at their fingertips. And I think one big difference is, I guess when when I started, if it was the working conditions were, or lack of, were just terrible. But that's what they were. It was long hours. There was no money, and if if you didn't like it, there was 400 other people outside who were prepared to sell their mothers.
I don't think that's changed.
Yeah. I think, but I think that, I think effectively there is a lot of unpaid work. But I think the difference now is, I don't think you're going to get a kid to do 2 or 3 years of unpaid work all the time. I think there's an enthusiasm, but after a while, I think the kid's going to say, you know what, fuck you, fuck this. I can download a cracked version of this, and I've got YouTube tutorials. And
I think it's just as hard to make it now as it ever was.
Yeah.
And it was just as hard back in my day as it is now, but it is a lot easier to learn now.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that what's required now is any different than what it was back then.
Yeah.
I mean, unpaid work. We had this expression called, we do projects called spec projects.
Yeah, and it still exists. Yeah.
Right. I must say that the two biggest records, well, not the two biggest records, but one of the biggest records and one of the other biggest records of my career were unpaid work.
Wow. Which were?
Which was Savage Garden in 1927.
Right.
Unpaid work.
So when you say unpaid, you were unpaid at the time to do those records?
Correct.
Were you paid subsequently after the fact?
I had what we called a back end. I made a deal with the band that if we got a deal, I got a percentage.
Right. Okay. Great. So you got royalties.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which no doubt was a good deal at the time.
It was better than a good deal.
Well, how did it feel like? I've never had a record. I mean, as far as international success, there's only one international band that I've worked with, which was a band called The Neighborhood in America. It was one gold album and a double platinum for a singles, and that's about as far as if you want to sort of like swing the dick around and talk about big international stuff. But what's it like though, getting a #1 record on Billboard that goes so ballistic around the world? It must be humbling. It must be exciting. It must be amazing.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's the top of the mountain. For about 2 years there, I was at the top of the mountain. I got to meet everyone I wanted to meet and talk to everyone I wanted to talk to, and it was fantastic. I can't knock it.
Yeah, it's
better up there than down the bottom.
Now, tell me, legend has it that didn't John Woodruff, who managed wasn't that one of those rag to riches kind of stories, or where he put everything on the line for that band? I think.
Well, I don't know how much was myth because no one got paid, so I don't know what what was put on the line.
Yeah.
But he definitely took a chance. He's the reason I got into the project. He heard the band send out all these demos to I think they said they sent out about 190 demos. Every record company and every management company in the country, and they got rejected by everybody except John Woodruff.
Right.
And John Woodruff thought there was something there, and he went out and took the demos himself to all the record companies, and he also got rejected.
Yeah.
And then another friend of mine, they were friends. Michael McMartin suggested to John Woodruff that he have a talk to me because at that point of time, I was in one of the valleys of my career because, ladies and gentlemen, you have peaks and valleys in your career, believe it or not.
Indeed.
So I was in one of the valleys of my career where I couldn't get a job, and I probably couldn't even get a job washing dishes at that point. And anyway, so Woodruff rang me up and played me this demo tape, and I thought one of the songs was really good. So I had nothing to do, so I said, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we did it in my living room at home.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it wasn't done in a studio. We did the whole album in a living room, my living room. My daughter's bedroom was the vocal booth.
Yeah.
The dog was curled at Darren's feet through all the vocals.
Yeah.
It was all done at home. One microphone, one preamp. Uh, Everything was plugged straight into. I had my 24-track tape recorder, believe it or not,
Yeah.
and I plugged everything straight into the back of the tape recorder.
Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson
I
style.
have no idea what they were doing, but I was crawling around the floor plugging things into the back of the tape recorder.
And it worked.
And we did it all at home.
Wow. How amazing. I had no idea.
We-
I thought that was a product of big studio and
No,
budget.
the whole album, including mixing, I think ended up costing us $25,000.
Which still, when was that? That was still a reasonable amount of money. Not
Well,
huge, but still.
not when you consider the 16 of it was mixing.
Wow.
I mean, we had to pay a few musicians, and there were a couple of odds and ends. It cost nothing. Cost nothing to make, except for the mixing. And we'd mixed that down here in Melbourne. Actually, we mixed it at John Farnham's studio out in the country.
Yeah, Wonga. I was out at Wonga. Not Fast Forward. I remember. It was a beautiful place. Though.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I forget what it was called. We got it really cheap because it had been just about stripped out. There was nothing there but the console and a compressor and a tape recorder.
Wow.
So we got it really cheap because they were just about to get rid of the console and everything.
Wow.
And we got Chris Lord Alge in a valley of his career too, right? He was at a point where he couldn't get a job, and we flew him out to Australia. I think we gave him 10 grand or something.
Yeah.
And he mixed the whole album in 6 days and went home.
How about that? That's extraordinary.
Like it was a really well recorded album, I must say.
Yeah.
It was my first engineering job.
Is that right?
First time I ever engineered.
Yeah.
Up to then, I'd only produced.
So did you? You said you liked mixing. Mixing was something that you enjoyed doing, or
No,
you allowed that to someone else?
I like mixing other people's stuff. I don't like mixing my own stuff. I can't seem to mix my own stuff, but I do a reasonable job on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
I like bringing somebody else into my own stuff.
Yeah.
It's like another perspective on what you're doing,
and an objective set of ears on it, and whatnot. So
and I'm not really an engineer, you know. I'm really good with songs, and I'm really good with arrangements and performances. Occasionally, I put the mic in the right place.
Yeah. What do you think the hardest, as a producer? What do you think is probably the hardest thing to get out? Is it getting performances out of artists? Is it managing personalities and dynamics?
Managing personalities is definitely the hardest thing. Breaking down preconceptions, taking people out of their comfort zone, that's really hard to do. I mean, most people come into the studio with a preconception of how the song should go, and I go, no, it shouldn't go like that at all. So that's and managing within a band, managing personalities. I remember the last Hoodoo Gurus album I did. Dave Faulkner asked me to produce it, and I think it was like their 10th or 12th album or something. And I said, Dave, you don't need a producer. What do you want me to do? And he looked at me and said, I want you to be the designated asshole, So it was really just, dealing with personalities. That's the hardest thing. The next hardest thing is, making sure of the material, the songs. Songs are hard work.
Yeah, I think the other hardest thing is, and this is where you probably need a crystal ball, and this is where I have a lot of admiration for the good A&R guys, is that the ability to be able to predict what will be a hit or what will probably be the next thing.
I'm sorry, but you can't predict anything. If you follow your gut and you follow your instinct and you hope, but I don't think you can predict. I think you can say to yourself, "This is a great song. It's going to be a smash." But it's kind of tongue in cheek when you do that, because you don't know. You don't know. Yeah, I feel it, but you don't know. I mean, there's so much between finishing the record and it getting on air and people buying it, and that's the last step, because I've had quite a lot of what in my career I call turntable hits. You know,
Yeah.
radio loved them,
Yeah.
played them to death.
Mm.
Nobody bought it.
Right. Well, tell me then, if that being the case, and I certainly agree with you in this, that you can't predict, then what is it then that defines, say, a good A&R guy who just managed, or is it just luck? You think A&R still is just
No,
is a luck thing?
no, it's not luck. You know, it's like a gambler. It's like you play the horses. You study the form,
Mm-hmm.
and you work out probabilities,
Mm-hmm.
and you go with the probabilities.
Yeah.
So that's what you do. You give it your best guesstimate,
Right.
and you sit down and you go, okay, all the boxes are ticked.
Mm.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
But it's still not predictable.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, well, if it was, then I'd be doing it, and
Exactly.
and without doubt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are boxes that need to be ticked.
Yeah. What do you find the biggest differences between the way the industry is operating now and it was back in the days when it was, let's just call them halcyon days for argument's sake?
Well, what do you mean by the industry? You talking about
the way the industry is run, the way labels operate. I mean, other than the technology and the distribution.
the labels exert a lot more control over the creative now than they did in my day.
Right.
In my day, they didn't really know what was going on, and they just hoped.
Right.
You'd get a budget, they'd keep their fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more control now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot less return for record now.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a streaming age.
Yeah.
We're in an age where people aren't really buying physical copies anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So the financial return of the record companies is a lot less.
Yeah.
So the amount of risk they're willing to take is a lot less.
Yeah.
The peripherals, the advertising, the buying of streaming stations, the 360 deals, the involvement in management companies, all these things now add up and are part of a record company's bottom line.
Yeah.
Whereas in my day, just selling the records was enough for the bottom line.
Yeah.
So it's feels a little bit more like organized corporate stuff than we were all pirates in my day.
Yeah, trailblazers and renegades. And
yeah, I mean, I did a deal with a company called Phonogram, which doesn't exist anymore, in the mid-'70s, and they gave me a budget, and I had to go and find a band because I had no band. I just had an idea, and they went, "Okay, here's some dough."
Away you went.
And away I went. And indeed, what little funding I had for 1927 was done that way. We had a pirate running WEA Records at that point in time, a real great record man, and great record men take risks.
Who was he?
With people?
Who was it?
Paul Turner.
Right.
We used to call him the dog.
Right.
A great record person takes a risk with the people, a bit of a risk with the people they're getting involved in, And I went to him looking for a little bit of funding, and for this band, and I had the demos in my pocket, and he gave me some money, and I said, "Don't you want to hear the demos?" And he went, "No, you know what you're doing."
So isn't that great?
That doesn't happen.
Not today.
No.
No.
Very, very rare. Very rare.
How do you spend your time these days? Most of your day. I mean, you still getting creative?
Well,
I
take 3 days a week. I take my kids to school and pick them up because my wife's gone back to tech. Yeah. She wants to get a marketing degree. So 3 days a week, I take my kids to school, pick them up.
Yeah.
I teach 2 days a week. I sit at I sit at Pro Tools for 3 or 4 hours every day. I try and find out what new software there is and how it works, and I download the demos and play with them. I try and stay current with the technology.
Yeah.
And I try and exercise a fair bit if I can now. I guess you'd call me a dilettante.
I've never heard that word before.
Haven't you?
A dilettante.
A dilettante.
What is a dilettante?
A dilettante is someone who dabbles
Okay.
rather than
You really
works.
sort of, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a nice way to live, though.
Well, I think I deserve it.
Well, you worked hard enough for it, and I
Well,
suppose,
I did, I did 40 years of 16 hours a day, 6 days a week in the studio. I mean, literally 40 years of that.
Yeah.
From, from 1974 till about 2008 or 9, I was in the studio like 16 hours a day.
Yeah. What was your biggest challenge, you think, in the 40 years that you were in that environment? What do you think was the biggest challenge or the biggest challenges that you faced through your career?
Self-confidence. It's always the biggest challenge you face.
Yeah.
Building up enough confidence to basically say, "Fuck you. This is the way we're doing it."
Right. Do you find that there's a lot of attribution of self-worth to record sales? Did you feel that that was your own? You'd measure your barometer by that, or other people would measure that?
I must admit it was very comforting. My first professional production job was a band called Old 55.
Yep.
And that was my first paid job. I think I got $500 to do the album.
Right.
And we went triple platinum.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And then after Old 55, my next project was a spec project. We did Radio Birdman.
Yep. Right.
Which, whilst not being commercially successful, was hugely critically successful and very influential.
Was that the Radios Appear?
Yeah. And then straight after that, I did Air Supply.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was 27. I did Air Supply, and we sold 8 million records, and I bought a house. You know?
Amazing.
So that was good. That was good for my self-confidence. But I would say that it took me till about 1985. I was probably about 10 years into my career before I thought, well, maybe I'm not just getting lucky.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Maybe I'm not just getting lucky.
So what did you do in those moments? So those moments of creative self-doubt, or moments where you were kind of thinking, well, maybe this is smoke and mirrors. Maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. Because as artists and creatives, the self-doubt thing comes in a lot. So how did you, when you were aware of that, or you were in that hole, what did you find helped you get out of it, or what was the thought process, or basically how did you turn that around?
I came to the conclusion that the only way you learn anything is to make a mistake, and that the biggest obstacle to learning is fear. So, if you're scared to be wrong, then you're not going to learn anything. So I got to a point where I realized that if I kept capitulating, if I kept giving in, I'd have an opinion, somebody else would have a different opinion, and I would give in to their opinion, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I learned nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got to a point where I just realized that it was better to make a mistake, because then I'd learn something. Because if I made a mistake, I knew what I was doing. If I capitulated, I didn't know what was going on. So, learning to be unafraid of failure, I think it was a turning point for me.
Yeah, that's a big one. Because I think a lot of people in general, but especially artistic creatives, suffer that. But also the fear of what others are going to think of them, and by being wrong, they stand out, and people don't want to stand out or be seen as being wrong, and so it's easier to kind of just acquiesce or be very tacit in their responses. Yeah. Because if they're wrong, then we're all fucking wrong, right? And no one can stand out to take the blame. But you're right. It takes some balls to do that too.
And having said that, it is important to listen to what everybody is saying. It really is important to treat opposing opinions with respect, and listen, really listen to what they're saying, but and give it very considered and respectful consideration.
Sure.
But if your gut says no, then follow it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, don't be an asshole. Don't go in there and go, I'm God and everything I say is correct.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in any other.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in other opinions. The best. I mean, making music is a collaborative process. I want to hear what everybody thinks about what we're doing.
Yeah. I think it's important too. It is, and I think the more we go into a more cooperative spirit rather than competitive, and contributing and just getting involved in the process, I think a lot of people fear that if I share information, or if I get involved, or if I just take part, people fear that there's one of the things I really hate Charles Fisher is when of the older brigade, the veterans, the more experienced, call them what you will, this idea that because they've done 30, 40, they've been around since Fred Flintstone played full forward for Bedrock, you know, they're they're right, and there's no other way, or there's some fucking secret, there's some proprietary technique, there's something going on, you know, voodoo that no one else has got. And so,
Yeah, that's not true.
and that's not true at all. But my
Obviously, that's one of the things I like about teaching.
Yeah.
Is that I'm working with a younger generation and I'm learning heaps of shit from these kids.
Isn't that fucking amazing dealing with these kids?
I mean, I'm being turned on to music that I otherwise would not have been turned on to.
Yep.
And I'm learning heaps of shit from these
Yeah.
people. And he didn't really. You don't take "I really hate you, Charles Fisher" out of context.
Yeah, yeah. It's not you. I'm not hating on you. I'm just accentuating the point of it's. I hate that particular attitude. That's all. And the idea that because you had a record that was a big fucking hit in 1985, it's 2018, motherfucker. And where's people's relevance today? You know.
Well, look, it doesn't mean anything. You know, the fact that you had a hit in 2018 or 2000 or 1985, that's great. Congratulations, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make your opinion any better than anyone else's. I don't think. Yeah. And really, you know, the one thing I'm grateful for is, over 40 years I've had consistency of hits.
Yeah.
So you know, you know the one hit guy doesn't mean a lot. You know,
Agreed.
like what you know, it's a consistency thing.
I completely agree.
You know, I mean that's why I send kids to you. That's why I sent quite a few kids to you last year, because you know you're doing it consistently.
Well, thanks, mate. Well, I do it like you do it because it's a love.
Yeah,
this has to be. This is a lifestyle, you know, and that's what I tell kids is I do this, and I'm sure you do. It's if you can get wealthy off it, great, but it's more about living richly as opposed to just being rich.
You can't do this for the money.
Absolutely not.
If that's your motivation, I think you should go into investment banking. You'll be a lot richer anyway.
Well, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I think particularly as I was growing up, my dad, who wanted me to be into academia, and there's an ideal, and I'm sure you do too, Charles, a lot of kids who have very well-meaning parents who want their kids to do well financially, but can't quite wrap their head around this idea that it's, yes, you need to make money and live in the real world, but there's nothing like job satisfaction, pursuing what you want. And even if you're going to fail at it, wouldn't it be better off failing at what you love? Because you're going to be doing shit and failing at what you don't love as well. So,
yeah, I mean, my parents were the same. I mean, what kind of a career is that? I mean, my dad, I was 40. I remember I was maybe 40 years of age, and my dad came down to see my studio, and he looked around and he said, "What are you doing here? Look at what is it you actually do?"
Yes, your dad and my dad must have been hanging out together. He just couldn't wrap his head around this idea. He goes, "Hang now, let me see. Let me get this straight." He says, people are gonna pay you to sit in a room and sit in front of a stereo effectively and listen to their music and just play around with it.
Fiddle with it.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, Dad. You know.
Yeah, no, look, you know, it's a parental instinct. We all want our kids to be secure. But I mean, emotional security is way more important. If you have emotional security, everything else works out.
Absolutely, and to be happy doing your thing, and this is why I guess you're the same. The whole what I'm doing now, what I want to talk about, how I want to get the message out to kids is to help them say, look, I've been there, I get it, and I'm not one to tell your parents to go fuck themselves. But by the same token, maybe you would or will through your action. But just to encourage these kids that you got a life ahead of you, and you are going to make more impact. You're the pebble that's dropping in the lake of life. That's going to create more reverberation as the years go on. And security is a fucking illusion. It is. I mean,
It is.
even if you got a 9-to-5 fucking job, mate. Tell me who can guarantee that?
Not today. I mean, what do they say? The average you hold a job on average for 3 years these days.
Yeah,
that's what I was reading the other day. People don't hold a job for much longer than 3 years, and they're out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, but here's the other thing too: is that I think the other mistake some kids make is that they worry that, but I need to get a job and I need to do something else. It creates this either or scenario, and I say no, it doesn't. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. In my case, for example, it was a 21-year period between going from making no money out of building a studio. All the money that I did in the studio went back in there, and I was making money doing other things, and it was like this seesaw effect, where over 21 years I went from zero income to getting to that critical mass point of like, I don't need to do all this other work now,
right,
and I can do this full time. So it doesn't have to be 21 years for everybody.
Well, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, my life's been like that, peaks and valleys. I remember my daughter coming to me when she was 16 saying, what would you think if I wanted to be a singer? And I said, look, if that's what you want to do, it's tough, but if that's what you want to do. 6 months go by and I went back to her and I said, hey, so you're still thinking about a singing career? And she said, I've watched you, and I've watched, one day we have money and the next day we don't. I think I want something a little more secure.
Yeah.
And I went, fine.
Yeah. She's happy.
She's happy.
And that's all that matters.
But for me, it's been peaks and valleys. I don't think, I made money one day and then I went through it while I didn't make any money. And then, God's been good to me but he won't give me anything until I've hit rock bottom. I can't quite explain to him. Could he please sort of maybe give me something halfway down? But no, he wants me to wait till I hit rock bottom, and then he gives me something.
Let me go on a tangent here for a second. You mentioned God.
Yeah.
Are you a spiritual man? Are you a religious man? Do you believe in a higher power?
I'm not a religious man, but I'm.
Where's your take on it?
I'm a spiritual man.
Tell us about that.
I don't have an image of a guy up there with a beard taking notes.
Yeah.
But I believe in karma. I believe in paying it forward, and I believe in it going around, and I believe in the picture of Dorian Gray. And I think the way you live your life, you get it paid back.
Yeah,
that's what I believe in.
Yeah.
So the 10 Commandments I believe in. I'm not sure about how we got them or where they came from.
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. But I believe, you don't kill, don't covet your neighbour's wife, treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. I believe in all those 10, shall we call them tenets, rather than commandments. So I believe in that stuff. I believe in karma. The Buddhists call it karma, right?
Yeah.
I believe in that.
Do you believe in something beyond this realm?
You mean an afterlife?
Afterlife, yeah.
I can't say I do.
Okay.
But I can't say I don't.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
The only thing that always bothers me whenever I think about an afterlife is, where are we going to fucking put all these people?
Well,
it must be pretty crowded there,
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, if Earth is what it is, and in the context of the universe and the galaxies,
you're right. We might be spinning off into another solar system.
Yeah.
I haven't come to terms with an afterlife. I can't say I believe in it, and I can't say that I would tell you you're an idiot if you do.
Sure, sure. I think I've come to a point now where I don't know. So, again, if you take away religion and spirituality, just look at it purely from fucking science's viewpoint. Energy cannot be destroyed; it just transforms. So, some kind of transformation. What that is, we don't know. But I think too many people, their fear of dying is what holds them back from living. So these days, I'm more about, well, I don't really know, but I can't waste too much time worrying about it because I'm here right now, and all I have is the now and what's going on at the moment.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's a lesson you learn through life. I think as you get a bit older, I hate to say it, but as you get older, I think you start realizing that.
I think some of us do. I don't. I mean, I think that as a general, my observation anyway, is generally that is the case. But here's the other thing I've noticed is too, Charles, and that is um, physical maturation is something that needs virtually no effort. We just get older and mature. We can do some things maybe to slow things down a bit, but our emotional maturity doesn't stay in step necessarily.
No, it doesn't.
I've met some people of your age or my age who have incredible wisdom, but I've also met some people of our age and older who you would assume that and then you meet these kids who are, I've met some kids 10, 20 years and you think, where the fuck did you come up with that?
Yeah.
How, like, that is, wow.
Well, seek and you shall find. If you're a seeker, then you learn quickly. A lot of people aren't seekers. A lot of people, they're just a little more materialistically. They're more interested in material things than they are in spiritual things.
But that's certainly the world we live in because we're all about distraction, and again, it's this whole idea of you're not good enough because that's everyone's greatest fear.
Look,
I'm not enough.
You change. I mean, I have a friend in America who used to be a hippie. He used to be into peace, love, dope, love your fellow man. And about 3 years ago, I'm looking at all his Facebook posts where he's screaming in fury at that when they had all these occupied.
Yes, occupy the city. Yeah.
He was screaming at these people because they're in his way, making him late for work. I'm going, boy, have you gone around the circle?
It's not uncommon that story. The traditional hippies of and the hippies of today. Commercial hippies.
The hippies were my generation, and I think we did a good job of fucking up the whole planet.
Well, I was watching a podcast by this guy called Dan Pena. He's they call him the $50 billion man. Funny guy. Very politically incorrect. Anyone that gives zero fucks, he's the guy. And he's just saying it's over, kids. He seems to think that the Romans had 1,000 odd years or whatever, and the British Empire. And as far as he's concerned, he thinks we've gone past it now.
Who's we? Who's we? Who did you refer to?
As society, as mainstream society, mankind. The world as it is today, humanity as a whole.
We're finished.
We're fucked, basically. We unless there is some radical shift in the way people start thinking and operating in the world, then just the way the resources are going and just
it does seem that way, but I'd kind of still believe a little bit in the human spirit.
I agree,
and I think I don't think anything's inevitable and out of control and uncontrollable. It's not easy, but I don't believe in the inevitability of anything.
Well, I don't think it's maybe not in my lifetime. And one example of that I can come up with is, look what happened at 9/11. I mean, I remember the 3-4 days, particularly after when that went down, how all of a sudden, until we're faced with, our extinction or our very own survival, all of a sudden the tribalism and the we against you against us and all that shit goes out the window. You know, I remember walking down the street, man, and strangers just going, "Hey, there was this
I,
beautiful energy that was around the place."
you're totally right. I mean, that's how dictators get into power. You know, they find a common enemy to make people focus on. You know, Hitler with the Jews. Maybe we'll get invaded by Martians, and everything will be great.
Well, that's the next thing, the next red flag event. Apparently, did you ever get into conspiracy theories at all? Or have you looked at it?
Yeah, I believe in conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
yeah, of course.
What's the what? All right, so tell me about the ones that you.
Well, I don't think things are black and white, right?
Yeah.
So, if you tell me that, the military-industrial complex was responsible for killing John F. Kennedy and not Lee Harvey Oswald,
Yeah, right.
I'll buy that as a possibility.
Yeah.
I don't think it's far-fetched.
Yeah. Well, someone's got to run the show.
Yeah, look, I don't think it's far-fetched. I mean, I don't know that it's been proven.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it can ever be proven.
Yeah.
But I don't think the theory's far-fetched.
That's it. Well, my take on it is basically they say, as is the micro, so is the macro. So there's hierarchies everywhere.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
everything from your local bowls club, president, secretary, to your members. So on a global scale, just logic tells me there's got to be some hierarchy. It's got to stop at some. The buck has to stop somewhere.
The buck has to stop somewhere. I agree.
Yeah. So someone ultimately is, if not, the head, the grand, the grand fromage of the planet, or it's certainly a collective of people.
Yeah. Look, I don't think everything is a result of that, but and it's very difficult to prove those things. But I'm fascinated by them, and I can see a probability.
Yeah.
So people say that Delano Roosevelt knew that the Japs were going to attack Pearl Harbor, but he didn't do anything about it because he wanted to take America into the Second World War.
Who knows?
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
No one's proven it, but I'll buy it.
Everything's plausible.
Everything's possible.
Everything.
Yeah.
I guess my take on that to us is the same way about the whole afterlife thing. It's like it's interesting. It's a fascinating discussion, but I don't allow it to dictate to me what I'm doing right now.
No.
I'm not going to allow. I'm not going to, sleep at night with a head pillow. The doing over my head. And,
we used to have air raid when I was in primary school in the 50s. I'll never forget. Well, even later, I think during the missile Cuban crisis in 1961, we had air raid practice. We used to. The school bell would go off, and we'd have to jump under the tables in case we were going to
by a nuclear bomb.
Get hit. and I remember all of us going, "What the fuck? Under the desk? That's going to save us from a nuclear
the fallout."
But they were, people were totally convinced in the 50s that there's going to be nuclear war.
Yeah. Well, there's always been the boogeyman. I mean, it was communism. It was communism during Vietnam.
Right. And now we have Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's the boogeyman.
Actually, you know what? I went and saw Roger Waters play last week, and he had this incredible. It was a very powerful show because a lot of his stuff, music with social conscience, and it was fascinating to me that songs like Pigs and Money and Welcome to the Machine still relevant today. In terms, and he had this amazing visual stuff. Anyway, when they played Pigs, it was a big thing to Donald Trump. It was very cleverly done, and he stopped at one point in the show and just talked about just the world and where it's at and the importance of people to step up and highlight things, particularly around the proliferation of nuclear warheads. And he gave special mention to Melbourne because part of the Nobel Peace Prize last year was awarded to a bunch of people that were doing work in Melbourne, of which our very own Adam Dempsey, who's an engineer, he was involved in that group. I was so incredibly proud of him. So yes, my friend, it's interesting.
Well, the greatest songs are timeless. The greatest songs lyrically are timeless. From a lyrical standpoint, they're timeless.
Do you remember the first song you heard where lyrically it spoke to you, where it really touched your soul? And Or
Oh,
are there any songs, for that matter, that you still hear today and they still hold that meaning?
yeah. Well, anything by Bob Dylan still has deep meaning for me.
Mm.
A lot of songs, of course, have emotional meaning. Love songs have emotional meaning that
Mm.
still mean a lot to me. Some of the soul things. I mean, sitting on the dock of the bay always takes me back to some place
Yeah,
that I remember. I'd spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time sitting on a dock by the bay,
yeah, yeah,
except mine was Watson's Bay in
yeah,
Sydney.
yeah,
So yeah, hundreds of them.
yeah. You still enjoy music the way you did?
Love it.
Yeah.
People cannot believe that I still get in the car, and so I really love pop music.
No.
I'm not esoteric. I'm not avant-garde. I really love
Mm.
pop music.
What do you like about it?
Uh, I like the way it makes me feel.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that it's talking to a young generation,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the beat.
Mm.
I love new sounds that they create.
Yeah.
I I just love it all,
Mm.
And I get in the car and I listen to Nova and I listen to Kiss and I flip dials all the time.
Yeah.
There are things I don't like,
Mm.
but there are things that just, I mean, you cannot listen to Despacito and not dance,
Yeah.
right? You cannot listen to Taylor Swift's Shake It Off and not project yourself into the soul of a 15-year-old girl.
Mm.
It's impossible. So I still love all that
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think music, especially for us as we're getting on, it's what keeps us young. And I hate the idea that as a bloke who's knocking on 55, people seem to think that dictate to you
Yeah.
what you want, what to wear, how to live, what music to listen to. And I get strange looks from people when I put on something and it's an underground club thing, which to other people just seems like this monotonous kind of thing or a techno track. And I'm getting fucking off on it, Charles Fisher. I get some strange looks sometimes, like
Yeah,
this, like, no, you're supposed to be listening to the old fucking music.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I get people ask me all the time, does it have to be pop? And I go, no, it doesn't have to be pop, but if you're ringing me up on the telephone, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get pop,
Yeah.
because that's what I don't like victim songs.
Yeah.
I don't like oh woe is me. I don't like that sort of lyric in songs. I like universality. Is that the word?
Yeah. Yeah.
In songs. And I love pop music.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's what I love.
You're guilty of it, Charles.
I'm guilty of it. Verse, chorus, middle eight, solo, chorus, finish. Thank you.
Speaking of which, do you think there is a formula?
No, there's
Okay.
no formula.
Okay.
There are structures that work. A friend of mine used to say there's a reason a cliche is a cliche.
Mm.
It's a cliche because it works.
Right. Yeah.
So there are things that work,
Mhm.
but I don't think, sometimes people do things that surprise you, and that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as it works, as
Yeah.
long as it takes you on a journey.
Mhm.
I think the only formula is that a song has to take you on a bit of a journey.
Sure.
I like it to have a beginning. I like it to have an end.
Mhm.
I like it to have some highs and lows. And
Mhm.
it's like a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to go to a movie and watch two people sitting at a desk across from each other for 2 hours talking about how tough their lives are,
Yeah.
and that's it. And that's the whole movie.
Speaking of which, have you seen that recent phenomenon of slow TV?
No, I don't
Okay.
even know what that is.
Okay. There was a thing that was on SBS. It was the Gang. It was basically, it went for seven. They broadcast it in its unabridged, which is 17 hours or something, and it was just the train just going. So basically, it's just you sitting and watching this thing, and people have been really enamored by it because most people's now their attention spans are so short. It's all about quick editing.
Well, wasn't that the basis for that movie, the Trump Show, or something? Not the Trump Show. What was that? The The Truman Show,
Yeah, thank you.
where they just filmed him for 24 hours
Yeah.
a day. Well, Yoko Ono did that in 1967.
Really?
She just put a camera on the street and filmed bums, wasn't it? She
Yeah.
filmed asses walking by, and that was her work of art, you know?
Yeah, I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
Yeah, it's not new,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's not new. But, and I guess there's an audience for it somewhere.
Yeah. Do you watch much TV, or do you have any
Yeah,
TV shows?
I watch heaps of TV. I said, what is it? I'm a populist.
Yeah.
I absorb everything in my culture that I love it. I watch TV, I listen to the radio, I go to the movies, I read magazines.
What's been a good movie you've seen of late?
I saw a great movie today. I took my kids to see Black Panther.
Oh, how good was that?
It was fantastic.
Took my son to that last week. That was
It
such a different
It was
take on it.
fantastic. I loved it.
You know?
Except I got home and I realised that I didn't stay for the end credits, and there was another scene after the end credits.
Oh, I missed that.
Anyway, there's 17,000 explanations for it on the internet, so I figure I probably wouldn't have understood it anyway.
Yeah. Same.
But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat. I love that stuff.
Yeah. The one I saw was I saw my eldest son, Den of Thieves, and it was a great, because I love crime films and a bit of shoot 'em up.
Yeah, me too.
But it was great because it wasn't gratuitously violent, but it had a great plot and a really good twist at the end, which I really enjoy watching a movie, and you just kind of think you got it sussed, and all of a sudden, wham! I just go cop that, and it was very, very cool. No, it was very, very cool. No, it was beautiful. So, mate, listen, just before we wind things up, tell me, as someone that's an educator, he talks to a lot of kids, he's got a pretty good feel for.
No, that's a strange word, educator. That's good.
Well, you're a teacher, but
I didn't want to interrupt.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Well, you are. What do you and kids watching right now, like, what do you think of a few pearls of wisdom, or if there's one? I mean, I know there's a lot. This is another podcast for another day, but what do you think is probably one non-negotiable?
Obsession. If you have to be obsessed. I did it. That was the topic of my seminar at Collards the other day.
Yeah.
You can't do this or any creative art form unless you're obsessed.
Yeah.
Like, this is you got to be doing this and thinking about it and doing it from the minute you wake up till the minute you go to sleep. And not only that, it should keep you awake so you don't go to sleep.
Yeah.
You have to work your butt off. You have to be obsessed with this. It's not a job. It's what we do is not a job. It's a life. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to think about it as 9 to 5, you have to be obsessed. You have to want to do this. You want to do this more than you want to take your girlfriend out.
Yeah.
Or your boyfriend, or go out with your boyfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother used to yell at me when I get out of your room and go outside and play, because I was locked behind the door playing with my sound tape recorder and my guitar.
Yeah.
And I was 12, 13 years of age.
Yeah.
It's an obsession. This is obsession.
Yeah.
There's not a job.
Yeah. You still for that level of obsession?
I am still obsessed about the quality of the work. I don't work that much anymore, so it's different.
Yeah.
But you can't equate where I am with someone who's, as you put it, who's trying to get going.
Yeah.
But in my teens, in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, I was obsessed. In my 50s, I was semi-obsessed. I was still working really hard.
Yeah.
And I had a wife who not put up with it, but who was very supportive. So I was very lucky. But I started to slow down. Racehorses slow down after a while.
Yeah.
But 20s, 30s, 40s, man, I mean, 16 hours a day I was working.
Well, you make an interesting point about the supportive partner, and they say that, again, the cliche of behind every man is a great woman, and I'm sure there's a great man behind every woman, but But in the context of, you and the relationships you've had, one of the things I see is that this industry is really fucking hard and takes its toll on people's relationships, especially on white women who do,
Totally.
and I think while I've met some incredible women who have had to put up with a lot and probably more than they bargained for, I think they romanticize the idea of being with a musician, but the reality of living with not just a musician, but an artistic creative in general, and that, as you said, you don't clock on and clock off. You don't have weekends. It's not about
No,
it's an identity.
I've been lucky. I've had 2 marriages, and both my wives were unbelievable, and both of them were completely supportive. I never heard words, "When are you coming home? Why are you doing this? Can't we do something else?" They were both incredibly supportive, and my current wife still is. It's you spend a lot, it's tough. I think it's tough on partners, and I think it's because, and I think it's the same for any creative thing you're in. If you're good at it, I will guarantee you're obsessed.
Yeah.
If you, I don't think you're good at it working I don't think anyone who works 9 to 5 and clocks off actually gets good at it.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what I love about seeing my current protege, Tom Beard, the level of obsession he has to it. I got to share a really great story about him when he came along, and like the other guys that have worked here, I wasn't looking for anybody, but you just come across a kid that shows that you're talking about initiative before, initiative and all the stuff that school and books can't teach you. And I remember I said to him, he said, "Oh, look," he kept saying, "Oh, can I come again? I'll come again." Yeah, of course. And I said, "Look, come in tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow at 7. Now, I get a text message the next morning at 6:48 a.m. I'm out the front. Of course, I didn't. People think 7 would it be a PM kind of job, being music. It's more of a late night,
No.
type of thing. And this kid, and I couldn't get angry at him, for waking me up. I thought that was beautiful, and that to me, that moment, so said to me that said, yeah, my gut is right. I'm going with you. We're going to make this work. And now this kid is not only taking part, but he's fucking taking over, mate. And he will be the next draw card here. But you're right. It's that relentless obsession.
Yeah.
It's just at it, and nothing matters more than that.
I agree.
So, mate, what a pleasure it was to have you here.
I enjoyed it.
What a great conversation.
I enjoyed it.
We could be here for hours. We've got to get you back, and we'll have to talk a little bit more about AIM and stuff that I want to talk to you about after the podcast. But, mate, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was absolutely fantastic. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're
it was brilliant.
welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for watching. I want to spend a big cheerio and thanks to our sponsors, The Cave in Abbotsford. So, g'day to the Farnham boys. And for those of you who want to get some pre-production done, or you want some rehearsal space, this is in Abbotsford in Melbourne. They've got a fantastic facility, and it's a great space and a venue in its own right. There's going to be a lot of great gigs coming up there over, in the weeks to come. So thank you, The Cave, for supporting this podcast and allowing us to be able to do it. Thank you, Tom Tennille, Backline Project, as always, coming in here and on a Sunday night and doing what you do. This would not happen without you guys. And thanks for watching. And don't forget, we are up on iTunes for those of you who rock it on the audio. We do iTunes now, so just look up Mastering Music, Mastering Live. So anyway, love you fucks. Have a beautiful Sunday night, and as always say, be nice to each other, but more importantly, be nice to yourselves, and we'll see you next week. All right, see ya. And that, my friend, is how it's done.